going to talk about the tissues. Now we are going to start the new chapter, and the title of the chapter is Tissues. The very first question that comes in our mind, what are tissues? Now, before we are getting to that, let us try to see what is the role of tissue here. I mean, why they are in our discussion, right? So in our previous chapter, children, we talked about the cell, which is the basic unit of the life, which is the fundamental unit of life. Now we spoke about the two category of organisms. In that chapter, we have discussed about the two category of organisms. The very first category of the organism is unicellular organisms, right? So we have discussed about the two categories of the organism. The first category of the organism is unicellular organism, and another category of organism is multicellular organisms, right? So children, when we talk about the unicellular organisms, so that means the organisms which are made up of by one cell. They are made up of by one cell. They are having a single cell only, right? And the examples are, yes, amoeba, paramecium. So these are the examples. Similarly, children, there was another class of organisms which are made up of by multiple number of cells. So that category is known as multicellular organisms. So multicellular organisms are those which are made up of by many cells, correct? Now in this category falls most of the living beings which we see around us, like the plants, animals, fishes, humans, birds. All those organisms are multicellular organisms. So children, these are the broadly two classification of living organisms depending upon the number of cells which constitute that organism, correct? So depending upon the number of cell which actually constitute the organisms are categorized into two broad categories. First one is the unicellular, in which the organism is made up of by that single cell only. So the organism is what? It is entire. The entire organism is a single cell. On the other hand, the second category is the multicellular organisms, in which the organisms are made up of by many cells, the number of cells. Now if you think about these points, in case of human cells, or we can say in case of human cellular organisms, that particular one cell perform all the functions which are needed by the organisms to survive. Basically, what are organisms need to survive, right? Organism को survival के लिए क्या ज़रूरत होती है? We need food. We need some system inside our body which can digest the food. We need some system inside the body which can excrete the undesirable food material, that is the waste material. We also need energy to do work, right? So these are some basic necessity of every living organism, right children? Now in case of unicellular organisms, the particular one cell that perform all the function. Sometimes that cell act as the digestive system. Sometimes this cell act as the excretory system. Sometimes this cell act as the circulatory system. So every function is done by that single cell only. So that particular one cell is able to perform all the functions, correct? Now what happens in multicellular organisms? Because in multicellular organisms we have million and billion of cells. Do you know which cell perform which function? children, for example, let us think a scenario. If you think the scenario of this fashion, for example, in your class there were 50 students. Now let us suppose you plan to celebrate Teachers' Day in your school. So you have a lot of work that has to be done. There has to be some students which perform cultural programs. There are some other students who are there to cheer you up as the audience. There is another set of students who perform the dance activity like the shadow dance. Some of the students perform group dance. They're performing dance in a group. Oh, they are looking so pretty in the pink dress. They are dancing together in the group. Some of the other students are there as the audience. There are some other students who look after the decoration part. There are some other students who look after the food part. Food served to everybody, food prepared on time. So there are many different work to perform. So how do we generally organize? Do we ask the entire 50 students to force to look at the cultural event and then looked at the decoration and then food part? We don't do like this, right? We generally do. We divide some students for decoration. We divide some students for food. Some students for cultural activity, right? So are you getting the point? So what we do? Since we have many students, we divide into groups and assign them a task. So children, this is what? This is division of labor. यहाँ पे हमने वर्क डिवाइड कर दिया, लेबर का डिवीजन कर दिया. सारे के सारे 50 स्टूडेंट्स पहले कल्चरल एक्टिविटी नहीं कर रहे थे. सारे के सारे 50 स्टूडेंट्स पहले डेकोरेशन नहीं कर रहे. सारे के सारे 50 स्टूडेंट्स फूड पार्ट नहीं देख रहे. हमने लेबर को डिवाइड किया. We divide the students into the group and assign them a task. So in a very similar fashion, in multicellular organisms work. They are also work in the very similar pattern. So we have million and billion of cells inside the organisms, and those cells form small groups, and group of cells will now perform that specific function. That group of cell is termed as tissue. I hope you got my point. Like children, talking about the example, एक और example हम लोग लेते हैं. When we take in food, जब हम food को take in करते हैं, लेते हैं, खाते हैं, food will crushed by teeth. Food किससे crushed होता है? Teeth से. Then food is then digested by the digestive system. Digestion का काम कौन करता है? Digestive system. The undigested food is excreted out through the excretory system. So this is what? This is again a division of labor. The work is divided, the labor is divided, right? The cutting of the food is done by teeth, the digestion is done by the digestive organs, the removal of the waste product is done by the excretory system. So the work is divided between the systems. Now this digestive system, excretory system, all these systems constitute by a group of cells which perform that specific function. So these group of cells are called tissue. ये जो सारे सिस्टम है, जैसे डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम है, ये जो डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम बनता है, ये डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम बनता है बाय अ ग्रुप ऑफ सेल. सो चिल्ड्रन, लेट अस सपोज दिस इज द सेल विच हेल्प्स इन द डाइजेशन. So this cell also helps in the digestion, this cell also helps in the digestion, this cell also helps in the digestion. So all these 4 cells helps in the digestion. So all these 4 cells are assigned for the specific function. They together perform the same function, same specific function, digestion का function कर रहे हैं. तो ये group of cell क्या कहलाएगा? ये कहलाएगा tissue. जो बेसिकली डाइजेशन का काम कर रहा है. Similarly, this cell performs the function of respiration. This cell also performs the function of respiration. This cell also helps in the respiration, and this cell also helps in the respiration. So all those 4 cells perform the function of respiration. The specific function is what? Respiration, exchange of gases. So the group of that particular cells which involved in the same function are the tissues. Right, children? I hope you got my point. So what is tissue? So tissue may be defined as a group of similar or dissimilar cells that perform or help to perform a common function and have the common origin. So I hope you got the clear idea that what is the tissue and what we are going to study in this chapter, right? So again, I will define the term tissue. What is tissue? A group of cells that are similar in structure, that are similar in function and work together to achieve a specific function. That group of cell is termed as tissue. Got it? So what will be the definition? The definition is a group of collection of similar cells performing or help to perform the same function and arise from the same origin. They are called as tissue. Acha, now before studying about the plants tissue and animal tissue, like children, the tissues are very different types depending upon the function of the organism, and they are categorized into 2 main categories. The first category is the plant tissue, वो tissue जो plants में present होते हैं, and the animal tissue, वो टिश्यू जो एनिमल्स में प्रेजेंट होते हैं. इससे पहले एक और बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ मैं आप लोगों से डिस्कस करना चाहती हूँ, दैट इज़ द लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. चिल्ड्रन, इफ़ वी टॉक अबाउट द लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, अगर हम लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की बात करते हैं, सो व्हाट डू आई मीन बाय लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन? दैट मीन्स व्हेन ऑर्गेनिज्म इज फॉर्म्ड, देयर आर डिफरेंट लेवल ऑफ फॉर्मेशन ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स. जब भी कोई ऑर्गेनिज्म फॉर्म होता है, so there are different level of the formation of organism. So let us look at these different levels. Like the very first level is the cell. All the similar type of cell with the similar origin, they combine together and form the tissue. All the tissue of same type and involved in the same or specific function, they together form organ. All the same organ which involved in the same specific function, they together form a system which known as organ system. And all those organ system together make a organism. सेल, बहुत सारे सेल मिल करके टिश्यू बनाते हैं, टिश्यू मिल के ऑर्गन बनाते हैं, ऑर्गन मिल के ऑर्गन सिस्टम बनाते हैं और ऑर्गन सिस्टम से बनता है ऑर्गेनिज्म. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, सेल जो रेस्पिरेशन में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, वो सारे सेल ग्रुप बनाते हैं और बनाते हैं टिश्यू. सारे टिश्यू जो रेस्पिरेशन में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं वो बनाते हैं ऑर्गन, रेस्पिरेटरी ऑर्गन्स, जैसे कि जिसमें आ गया ट्रैकिया, जिसमें आ गया लंग्स, ब्रोंकाई, राइट. ये सारे बनाते हैं ऑर्गन सिस्टम. जितने भी ऑर्गन रेस्पिरेशन में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं वो सारे एक साथ मिलके सिस्टम बनाते हैं, जैसे हम कहते हैं रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम. और बहुत सारे सिस्टम, रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम, सर्कुलेटरी सिस्टम, डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, ऑल दीज सिस्टम टुगेदर एंड फॉर्म द ऑर्गेनिज्म. ऑर्गेनिजम्स में कई सारे सिस्टम्स होते हैं, तो ये सारे सिस्टम मिलके बनाते हैं ऑर्गेनिज्म. सो दिस इज़ द लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. सो दिस इज़ द way that organism is formed, and there are very different levels are involved in the formation of organisms, and those level are termed as level of organization. organism के organization में जो level होते हैं वो level of organization कहलाते हैं. I hope it is clear to you all. Now before that, these are some of the examples of animal tissue and plant tissue. Like children, in human beings, the cells of muscular tissue contract and relax. In that way, they helps in the function movement. Talking about the plant cell, the plant cell of the vascular tissue, they conduct water and food from one place to another place. So in that way they help in the transportation. Whether there are two type of vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, they are different but they involve in the same function, that is known as transportation. So this is the example of tissues, right? Now the next question, are all tissues similar? That means whether it is an animal tissue or it is a plant tissue, are they all look similar? Do they all look exactly similar? So let us have a look at that. Well children, the answer is no, not exactly. Now let us try to remember the plant cell and the animal cell, which we have discussed in our previous lesson, right? So we have a good in-depth discussion on plant cell and the animal cell. So do you think that a plant cell and the animal cell look exactly similar? Children, if you remember both the pictures which you have studied in the previous lesson, the picture of plant cell and the animal cell, if you remember those pictures, so you found that the plant cell is very much different with the animal cell. So there are difference between the plant cell and animal cells. Some of the difference we will discuss. The very first example, children, in plant cells you had a vacuole, right, which had an important role to play. They give rigidity to the plant cell, whereas in the case of animals, vacuole did not have much role to play. Remember? So vacuole, the first difference is vacuole, right? Because plants have a vacuole, central vacuole, large central vacuole. On the other hand, animals does not have so large. Similarly, in case of plant cells, you have an additional cell wall, and which was missing in the case of animal cells. So there are many such differences between the plant cell and the animal cell, correct? So that means the plant cell and the animal cell were not exactly similar. Now these cells only again group together and to form the tissue, right? Now do you think a plant tissue and an animal tissue will be exactly similar? जब बेसिक यूनिट सेल ही एक जैसी नहीं है तो क्या लगता है, ये सेल मिलकर ही बनाते हैं टिश्यू, सेल ग्रुप बनाते हैं और तब टिश्यू बनता है. So what do you think, a plant tissue and animal tissue will exactly similar? No, because the component which is making the plant tissue and the animal tissue, they are not similar. जो बेसिक कंपोनेंट है सेल, जो टिश्यू बनाते हैं, प्लांट टिश्यू और एनिमल टिश्यू बनाते हैं, जब वो बेसिक कंपोनेंट ही एक दूसरे से सिमिलर नहीं है, उन्हीं में डिफरेंसेस हैं, तो टिश्यूज़ कैसे सिमिलर हो सकते हैं? So therefore plant tissue and animal tissue will not be similar. And also another thing is that tissue are assigned some specific functions. Now the functions are also according with the lifestyle and food habits of organisms, whether it is plant or the animal, right? तो habits पे भी depend करता है, चाहे वो plant है या animal. As I mentioned before, the cell is one thing. Plant cell and animal cells are not similar. Therefore, plant tissue and animal tissue are not exactly similar, right? So this is the one thing. Now the second thing is that since plant and animal both are two different kind of organisms, which have different kind of lifestyles, which have different kind of food habits, so therefore the kind of function they want the tissue to perform, they are different, correct? तो function से different हो गए, तो उनकी basic habits से different हो गई, so how they become similar? So that is why the tissue are again different. Structurally they are different because cell is different, and functionally they are different because two type of organisms leading two type of different lifestyle and food habits. So that is why they are totally different. अब अगर बच्चों मैं examples की बात करती हूँ, तो plants are stagnant. जो plants होते हैं वो fixed होते हैं, stagnant होते हैं, they does not move. animals have movement in order to perform the work activity. So depending upon the lifestyle, they differ. Plants are autotrophic. On the other hand, animals are heterotrophic. So depending upon the food habits, they are again different from each other. So autotrophic की अगर हम बात करें, so the way of plant prepare its food, it is totally different from the way of preparing or obtaining food in animals, right? So the lifestyle of animal and plants is very much different. That is why functionally tissues are quite different, right? So let us look at the major difference between plant tissue and animal tissue, right? So here we classified broadly tissues into the category as plant tissue and the animal tissue. So broadly there are two kind of tissues, right? So let us look at the difference. Like mostly if we talk about the plant cells, so mostly are dead supportive tissue to provide mechanical strength. अगर हम plant tissue की बात करते हैं तो mostly they are dead and supportive tissues जो mechanical strength provide करते हैं. So mostly the plant tissues are supportive in function. That means they give support to the plant, because if you see the plant are always static at a place, as I say just mentioned before, they do not move from one place to another place. So in that way they need some mechanical support. So they are made up of by the dead tissues. So right, so in that way it basically provides support to the plant tissue. Whereas in case of animal cells, mostly it has living tissue. Why? Because they keep moving from one place to another place for different activities, in search of food, in order to work, in order to live. Animals keep on moving, so for this they need a lot of energy, right? तो इसलिए they are different from the plant tissue. For example, when you fall ill, you do not have much energy even for moving from one place to another place. Am I right? You just feeling lie down on your bed. So what does that mean? That means if you want to move, you need more energy. If you need more energy, the tissue constitution must be living, right? So because tissues are made up of cells, again the living, and cells have mitochondria, and that mitochondria generates energy. So now you can relate, right? How cell provide energy and how cell is utilized by you and move from one place to another place. So there are much difference between both of them, right? Now talking about the second example, like secondly children, when we think of plants, so growth is limited to the specific regions. So dividing tissues are located in those regions, right? So dividing tissues are localized in those regions. Now when you look at the plant body, let us suppose this is the plant body, and it does not grow uniformly everywhere. If you look at the plant at your house, so what you see? You planted a small plant like this, right? Now you keep giving it water, let it get proper sunlight. Now what will happen? The plant grow and become like this. This is the plant, it grows and become like this, right? So if you see, most of its growth, the maximum growth is showing by the roots and by the shoot, right? Shoot grows upward and roots grows downward. So root is growing fast, shoot is growing fast, so length is increasing fast. But if you look at the growth which is shown by the flower, which is shown by the leaves, fruits, it is comparatively less. Like what happened? The flower, talking about the flower, so सबसे पहले क्या होता है? There is a bud, bud से बनता है flower. After that, it is not that flower keep growing and growing on. अब bud है, bud से अगर flower का ये size बना है तो इसका मतलब ये थोड़ा ना कि फिर flower इतना होगा, फिर flower इतना होगा, फिर flower इतना होगा, फिर flower इतना होगा. It is not like that. It is not like that flower is keep growing and growing, right? But when you look at the shoot and root, it keeps growing and growing. जब हम root और shoot की बात करते हैं तो root system, roots और shoots जो हैं, they keep on growing, but the flower and bud is not keep on growing. So that means there are certain regions where the growth is maximum. So that is why it is said that growth is limited and in the specific regions in the plant. And those regions where growth is more, they are known as dividing regions. Whereas the regions where it is not prominent, they are known as non-dividing regions, right? अच्छा, अब अगर मैं बात करती हूँ animals के बारे में, growth is almost uniform throughout. Children, if you look at this small child which is just born, if you look at the 4-year-old kid, and if you look at the adult human being, what do you see? Everything has increased in size. It is not like that only the height of the person increases and his fingers, his hands are still remain same. It is not like that, right? So everything is growing uniformly, whether it is your face, whether it is your finger, whether it is your height, whether it is your weight, everything is increased uniformly. So the growth is uniform everywhere. So that is why the animal tissue and plant tissues are different from each other, right? So today, children, we have already discussed about the tissues, we have discussed about the types of tissues, and we have seen that how the animal cell different from the plant cell, right? So children, in the next video we will discuss about the plant tissue and the animal tissue in more detail. One more thing, children, like if you have any query, any doubt, then feel free to ask me. Okay, so thank you and have a nice day.